Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. I'm more contemplative these days than Amok, but we're here. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable and not considerable. All things not considered, really, when you think about it. This is what I call the a micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs, although you don't have to be any of those things. You can just be an ALL, all the rest of you. That's what we do here. This is Emil Muck's Takeout Live number 161, where I ask the question, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? AKA, what that? We filled the void here on the Takeout. Uh, we are on Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. And we're live because it's just more dangerous this way. Put a Filipino in front of an old gong and let it fly. But we're here. When we're here earlier, this is what I call the lanyap section, the little something extra. And we're going to give it to you today. The show starts around 2 o'clock. And we'll have Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales on. We'll talk more about Colin Powell because he really hit me. His death really hit me. But now I want to talk about the stuff that I consider important. Well, just stuff that, I wouldn't get around to. And this is really a great sports time. You got baseball coming down everywhere. The Red Sox are just hot. And I got a soft spot in the Red Sox. And that green monster. I just can't believe the green monster, I guess, serves everybody. You can hit off it. You can play. It's like it's like a fronton, as they call it in France or part of Spain, where they play wall ball or handball. But it's like, how many home runs has the green monster robbed? And, and the Red Sox are they hit it over the green monster. You'll learn how to loft it so you're hitting over the green monster. Anyway, the Red Sox are just like creaming the Astros, and the Astros have no pitching. They send Zach Greinke to the mound today to face the Red Sox. They're playing in Fenway. And I just realized that, I didn't really go to Fenway Park as a kid or when I was in Boston. I never went to Fenway Park. I was too busy for baseball because I was in Cambridge. And although I did go to to Kenmore Square, to the not Jewish, but the Greek deli, the Aegean Fair, because a friend of mine worked there, and he would slip me the lanyap, a little something extra, the hummus. He'd say, hey, who was a Jewish guy at a Greek deli? He'd say, hey, here's some lanyap. And so I was in Kenmore Square, but I never went to see the Red Sox. So I'm watching the Red Sox now, and I'm thinking, God, they could win the American League, the Red Sox. They could beat the Astros. And if they do, my goodness, then will they face the Dodgers or the Braves? That could have been the Giants. Oh yeah, we're still despondent about that. The Giants, no mistake, no excuses for the Giants. They didn't expect to be there, but boy, were they a good team this year. And hopefully they'll repeat. But this is the thing about sports. So the Astros and Red Sox are playing. The Dodgers and Braves are playing again today. This is sports. Sports and baseball. It's exciting this time, and it culminates in the World Series, right? All right, so then that's baseball. Then football, let's forget about football for now because football comes on Sunday. So let me speak about basketball. Basketball is happening now. And oh my God, the Warriors look good this year. A lot of people are saying, oh, no, not the Warriors. It's going to be the Lakers? No. Oh, it's going to be the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets with the deserter. What's his name? Kevin Durant. Durant Street in Berkeley, or Durant Avenue in Berkeley, no longer named after Kevin Durant. But no, he's good. Kyrie Irving, the unvaxxed. I don't know. I have no love for Kyrie Irving. Get vaccinated, Kyrie. But I don't think the Nets are going to win. I think the Warriors have a decent shot of surprising everybody because no one expects it. But if they come back, that'll be a story. That will be a story. Anyway, they start up tonight. My South Asian friends, my longest standing Indian American friends, have season tickets. They're excited about I'm sure they're excited about the Warrior season starting up. So they play tonight. So I'm putting down my prediction. The Warriors are going to do a whole lot better than anyone thinks. A lot better than just making the playoffs. They are going to go deep in the playoffs. That's my prediction. And then the final thing is football. Football is like, all right, the 49ers had a bye. I didn't care about the Raiders. But it's funny, isn't it, how the Raiders got in the news, they dumped Gruden, and now suddenly the Raiders actually played well last Sunday. Gruden deserved to be dumped. He was part of this investigation of the Washington football team, which is corrupt to the core. I mean, just the name, the old name, they had to be forced to use Washington football team, which is the generic name. But they uncovered all these emails. And, you know, the thing that gets me, and I mentioned this last week, but people need to understand it's still true. You're going to dump Gruden and play high-minded, we are all for diversity. But what did you do about Colin Kaepernick, for goodness sakes? So a lot of hypocrisy on the part of the NFL. But my big dig about the NFL today during this Lagniappe section, and I mention it now because I was watching the Kansas City Chiefs, and, you know, they pulled it out. They barely pulled it out the other day. And their star tight end, Travis Kelce, goes on. And look, I used to do some sports. As a player, okay, Pop Warner, but come on, forgive me. I was a player. I know what it smells like in the huddle. But I also was a reporter where I'd ask people, well, what do you think? Or what are you doing? Or what do you know, how did that play happen? So Travis Kelce is being interviewed, and he's being asked, well, you know, tell us about your performance. And he says,
it's just, like I said, man, when everybody just goes out and beats themselves, you know, we're a tough team to beat.
To bees themselves? When everyone goes out there and just bees themselves? Is that like urinating on yourself? Or what is he talking about? It's
just, like I said, man, when everybody just goes out and beats themselves, you know, we're a tough team to beat.
You're a tough team to beat, I know, in football, but in the grammar competition, how tough are you? I mean, if
it's just, like I said, man, when everybody just goes out and beats themselves, you know, we're a tough team to beat.
To bees themselves. See, this is the problem with sports. The grammar. Forget about Gruden's emails. What was the grammar like in Gruden's emails? I mean, really, what would Travis Kelce say?
It's just, like I said, man, when everybody just goes out and beats themselves.
Bees themselves. I had to think about that. Bees on themselves? What exactly?
Yeah. It's just, like I said, man, when everybody just goes out and beats themselves.
Bees themselves. Okay. It took me a while to recover from that. I hope you sentence diagrammers out there can figure that one out. But it is one of the things about people on the air, people on the big air and the small air. I consider this on the internet kind of the small air, and it's more like anything goes here. But really, grammar has to count for something, right?
It's just like I said, man. When everybody just goes out and beats themselves, you know, we're a tough team to beat.
Oh yeah, Travis Kelce. He just wants to bees himself, and that's what I just want to bees myself, as Sly and the Family Stone said. Thank you for letting me bees myself again. Anyway, this is the Lanyap section. It's the only time I'll talk about sports just in this run up to our 2:00, and we are now officially into the 2:00 hour when we're live. You may see this recorded. This is when the show officially begins. It's Emil and Amok's Takeout. This is number 161, where I ask the question, what does an Asian American think? And today, we're going to talk about being a firster. Being like Colin Powell, I am still is upset the word. I am upset a little bit. Colin Powell was a throwback. Colin Powell was a guy, he was a stand-up guy, and he was a guy who you could trust. He was principled, and he was a Republican. And if anyone ever hoped for a kind of bipartisan sense about anything, you need people like Colin Powell to lead the way, to be the model, to say, yeah, we know where the truth is, right? We know where the truth is. We analyze things. We know what's best for our country. We're patriots, et cetera, et cetera. We follow the 4-star general. So when Colin Powell died, when the word came out, I was pretty upset. And it came on the day when Filipinos, October 18th, 1587, Filipinos are documented as being first to step foot on what is now American soil, on here in North America. So it was like a day for firsters, October 18th. And perhaps appropriate that a firster like Colin Powell passes away. A first African American Secretary of State, Joint Chiefs of Staff, except 4-star general. I mean, it's just like incredible, the amount of first. But once you're a breakthrough BIPOC, a black person, indigenous person of color, once you break one barrier, it's like the number of barriers that you break, my God, it's like it's going to be barrier after barrier. And what a life. If you're a person of color, an Asian American, a Filipino American, if you're listening to this show, you want to be like Colin Powell in more ways than one. And the fact that he was a Republican, now I know many of you are not. Many of you are more progressive. Some of you are maybe more moderate. Some of you may be as on the spectrum, political spectrum, as Colin Powell. So you understand what it takes to be first, to play the game. So you're beyond political, you're beyond race. You are a firster. You're Colin Powell. It's beyond politics, which is sort of what we need right now in everything in the United States, in this divided country. Why are we so divided? By the way, Colin Powell was a devoted Republican, but still came out against birtherism and supported Obama in 2008. He was a Republican even to January 6, 2021, when he saw the insurrection and he said, I'm out. I'm independent. That's why I say we need more people like Colin Powell today. If we're ever going to get a sense of a united democracy, a United States, that's why I still feel the impact of his loss today. So I want to bring on a political expert, Asian American history expert, Filipino American history expert. He's a professor at the College of Ethnic Studies in San Francisco State University, Daniel Phil Gonzales. Dan, thank you for joining me. It's just sort of coincidental. We were contacting each other. Colin Powell dies, and you are probably one of the closest people I know who have links to the military. So tell me about Colin Powell. When you hear about someone, I mean, am I overreacting to the fact that he was such a great man? I mean, I'm wearing green, a military green in his honor, I guess, today. But there was something about him, even though he was conservative, even though he was a Republican, there was something about him that everyone, no matter what political stripe, people could admire, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, he was extremely charismatic,
Yeah.
and he impressed me long before he made. Well, he had only made one star at that time,
Mhm.
as being very careful about public speaking. So
Yeah.
he was. You could tell that he had gone over multiple scenarios in his head, and he was ready to take a position or make a statement on issues that usually, people don't call on a general to make statements unless there's an emergency of some sort going on.
Yeah. Well, he was in charge of a lot of emergencies when he
Right.
was
He was,
when
and
head of the military. So I'm
I
like,
was concerned about that during the start of the what might have been the start of the Iraq War, right? The Desert Storm, right?
right.
Another time of questionable vaccinations. And so, if you want to look back at why some people are resistant, that also is an example. I've never heard anybody discuss it, though.
Yeah. Well, see, everyone brings up the point that in 2003, he made the case to the UN Security Council and he based it on what we know now is faulty US intelligence that Saddam Hussein had access to weapons of mass destruction. He later understood, Powell understood that he was wrong. He owned it, he said it. That's something that would never happen today. Do you think? I mean, and
Yeah.
that's really to Powell's credit.
Yes. Well, General Milley has done things not as potentially uh, harmful,
Mhm.
but he has criticized. He's been self-critical,
Mhm.
but not about issues, perhaps Afghanistan, right, and the withdrawal, but not about issues as large as those that that the four-star general had to face in his time. I mean, he served under at least five presidents, maybe even more, at least in that close capacity. Around the NSA,
Right.
around the Pentagon, and right in the cabinet of one president at least.
Yeah.
So,
Bush,
but,
well,
so,
two, Bush and
so
Bush W.
that's right. So yeah, that's right. And Bush W was a two-term guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, he also is known to have been at odds with Cheney and Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
And so to take positions that actually challenged people who were very close to GW, right, George W. Bush, and who many people thought that Cheney was the real president of the United States, right? I mean,
Right.
that was an accusation that was out there, and I don't know if he ever denied it, you know. But first of all, I started with charisma,
Mm.
and he was just a natural leader. Okay,
Yeah.
so he had that going for him, and that's a personality effect. Uh, Secondly, he was unquestionably honest. That's very difficult to do, and still get 4 stars.
Right. And very
Because,
difficult to do in politics, period.
well,
As we,
that's exactly the point.
yeah.
Because what people don't look at is that the the ascendancy of officers is a very political process.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that deserved promotion that didn't get it or had to wait a long time because there were people who were favored over them, despite the fact that their record in both combat and or peacetime situations, right, was better than others. So I was always concerned that that Powell would be targeted for not just because of himself as an individual and moving up the ladder, but because he was black. And I
Right.
don't mean that in individual terms. I mean that, anybody who gets into high profile circumstances like he did
Yeah.
can be targeted. But if you're black, that increases the likelihood that you will be targeted, and in very, very mean ways.
Right.
People who decide they're going to use race as a club uh, are willing to do aggressively mean-spirited, mean-intended things, including and up to violence.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. People, you say the word club, which is something to strike with,
Yeah,
but the fact is, Colin Powell rising the way he did, he earned his spot because of what he did. He earned his spot in the club.
right.
So they had to strike carefully against Colin Powell.
Yeah, well, the other side of that is if you're favored, and this is particularly true in circumstances involving what people on the right are willing to do. I don't like ascribing the term conservative to the people on the right as we know them now, because they're not conservative.
Right.
Very few things they believe in are conservative in the traditional sense, and that is tokenism. So then the other issue is, right, is Powell going to be seen as being chosen for any of the jobs that he occupied as tokenism? Okay, so what was Condoleezza Rice, right, chosen by the right, right, the Republican Party
Right. To be his
for
successor.
tokenism?
Right.
Was Justice Thomas, right? Uh,
Well, but this raises some points about why is it that people, even though they may be at odds with Powell politically, they
yes,
know that Powell did the right thing and they can embrace him no matter where you are on the political spectrum. The same may not be true with Clarence Thomas or Condoleezza Rice or Thomas Sewell or any number of leading black conservatives who are public. There
well,
was something about Powell that brings people together. Was that the military? Is that the idea that, well, the military protects us, the military protects all? Is that the thing that
you
made,
mean the institutional
well,
in,
he stood,
influence?
yeah, he
Yeah,
stood for the military. And when people see him, they don't see a conservative right wing icon. They see, well, he's a patriot. He's going to protect us. He's also a person of color and he stands for the military. We can trust him, or at least more than would you trust him? I think more people would say, I trust him versus, say, Clarence Thomas or any other black
I think
conservative.
he was. Well, Clarence Thomas. The reason that he's not trustworthy for me, right, goes all the way back to his confirmation.
Oh
process,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that was going to stick with him forever, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other, to supplement that, he has been um, on the very conservative side of Supreme Court decisions. And until really the last 3 years or so, he hardly said anything except to concur with prevailing opinions.
Yeah.
So only recently has he come out with the leading opinion statement, right? Uh, Now, on the other hand, um, the great general that we're referring to now was tested many times
Mm.
on political issues, and the stances that he took were principled and well reasoned, right? So he was out there saying what his reasons were for supporting, and even though he was wrong about WMDs in Iraq, okay, he the evidence that he was given supported that.
Yeah. And also he did not lose, even though he lost some face internationally, but he still continued to have some sway nationally. And he came out and chose Obama over McCain. He
Right,
came out, even though he was a Republican, he
right,
showed that you could be a principled, independent Republican conservative.
right.
And some people have been saying now, boy, they regret that Colin Powell did not
Did not
try
run, yeah, for
to
president.
be president, because I think he would have been kind of an Eisenhower kind of president. Maybe not the greatest president, but a unifying force, a unifying president.
Could have been, could have been. I think you have to take a look at the conditions in the society, the prevailing conditions in the society, and I think that when people saw the reactions to Obama, right, announcing that he was going to run, and one of the first things I said in my class was, I'd like to know from the FBI, how many death threats are coming in on a regular basis that clearly show racial animus. Okay, he criticized Trump for going along with the not only the birther position that Obama is not qualified to be president because he wasn't born in the United States.
Right.
He also went with the Muslim suspicion, right? And Powell came out and said it's just not true. Okay,
Right.
so he established credibility by taking positions that were fact based, okay, well reasoned, and fairly stated. No exaggeration.
Yeah, and I think, boy, he set a model. If I'm putting him out there as a model for people of color right
Hmm.
now, he's a model for people who want to be leaders, period, no
Yeah,
matter what race.
regardless of color, exactly.
Because we don't see that now. We don't see that kind of leadership. We don't see that kind of political courage, which is, I guess, that's what we come to expect from a military person, courage, because he displayed it politically. And boy, you wish you could see some members of Congress displaying that kind of courage, when it comes to either backing or not backing, Biden's infrastructure plan, the big part and the small part, the human infrastructure and the physical infrastructure. I mean, as we speak, there are the moderates and the progressives of the Democratic Party meeting with Joe Biden right now. And I think if we just took everything that's come down over the last few years and try to say who's principled, who's spending, who's a conservative, we just go ahead and back Biden, because the conservatives haven't been principled when it comes to spending. And we need, as a country, to shore up our infrastructure, both our social infrastructure and our physical infrastructure.
Yep.
So I just think that someone like, if there were more people like Powell, boy, we just, that's why the loss of a Powell is so significant. We need
Yeah,
it. We need it. We need guys like him more than guys and gals
yeah.
more than
I
ever.
think they exist. I think they exist. It's just that part of this is a media problem. There are people who are very righteous and capable and charismatic. You know, the for him to rise to the level of four-star general means that he had to uh, subject himself and his family to the gauntlet. Okay, one star, you can earn that um, and not be among the greats. Okay, in the annals of military history and historical hierarchy, right? Even two, but getting past 2 stars requires not only a great deal of achievement as a leader, but it requires that you didn't insult the wrong people at the wrong time,
Well,
and
yeah,
you
it
know,
means that you were mindful. I mean, and meditative enough about your own, political career or military career that you did
yeah,
the right thing, which, you know, you're not going to be your finger on the hair trigger,
right,
and that's a positive thing. I mean, just to think, 4-star general, that's something, and I I I just I just mourn the loss of a guy like that because he shows the just how weak kneed and how spineless so many of these politicians are today. Even though, like we said, he's mindful about going through all the little the pitfalls and all the landmines out there as you maneuver a military career. He was so skillful at it that he still has more backbone than the people in politics today in Congress.
yeah. Well, the other problem is that the degree. I mean, Powell himself spoke about this problem. He said the degree of polarization, right, um, causes people to situate themselves towards one of those two poles,
Mhm.
and that's really not conducive. That situation is not conducive to people making rational arguments that recognize the validity of some elements of your opponent's position. Okay, you're starting to see that now, although not publicly enough,
Yeah,
in these discussions that just began within the Democratic Party.
yeah,
That's a better illustration of how government is supposed to be done than the previous, I would say, after the first 2 years of the Obama administration. So what was that? He took office in early 2009.
yeah,
So, after the spring of 2011, all the way up until this point, okay, the polarization has increased. And what Trump did was act as a catalyst, and all of the people that were around Trump, they acted as a catalyst, okay, to the energizing and organizing of some of the worst political and social elements in American society.
yeah. And I will say this that you know Asian Americans have a role in this. I mean, amongst the progressives, there are Asian Americans. Amongst the moderates, are Asian Americans. They have a role in trying to bring together, um, the votes to get the Biden plan through. Which I think if we were all objective, we'd agree. Look, we need to spend money on our infrastructure. We need the money to take care of our people. We
Yeah,
need, yeah,
these ideas were particularly the ideas about the so-called social infrastructure. The Those ideas go all the way back to the late 60s and early 70s. And they
yeah,
were ideas that were being argued about during the Nixon administration. You know, as bad a rap as Nixon gets as an individual, let's face it. If you were to shrink him the way we shrank Mr. Trump,
Yeah.
you'd be able to see beyond the curtain, right? And
Yeah.
what the problem was with Mr. Nixon, he was vexed with psychological issues, but from a political perspective, he did a lot of good things.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, being a Republican back then in the '60s was a lot different than being a
Oh
Republican
yeah, oh yeah.
today, and also the kind of people, right? I mean, Trump, just by looking at his actions now, trying to claim executive order or executive
Executive privilege.
privilege,
Mhm.
and trying to keep documents from being released to Congress. It's like all obstructions from a private person's perspective who has no business being a public servant. But he was the top public servant of the land. He
Well,
didn't quite get.
why, Emil? I mean, why does he get away with it? He gets away with it because people who support him don't care when he gets criticized as saying things that have no legal meaning and that are actually violations of the Constitution. Uh, he That was one of the things that really upset me about the way that we covered the critical media, especially organizations like Politico, right? When they criticize him, they were just counting, the quantity of falsehoods, right? Uh, and some were looking at Politico. Sometimes was looking at the quality of the falsehoods and the negative impact that they had. Okay, that's not enough.
Yeah.
People should
Well,
have been arguing about outright violations of the Constitution.
yeah, yeah, and that didn't come out till later, but still, for people who like quantification, more than 35,000 lies or misleading statements, yeah, tends to be a preponderance of evidence.
Yes, it does. But then that means that what? There's at least 35 million people who don't care.
Yeah.
They still
Well,
support him.
this is
He's
true.
lying
Look,
right now. He's stalling right now. He's doing exactly the same thing that he did as a privileged president, right? And he's
yeah,
trying to get away with it as an ordinary citizen. And so he's. This is evidence that he really is crazy.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, he's a megalomaniac at least,
And
and
and so
he-
then we have to ask the question: why do people support this megalomaniac? Why do they insist on considering him? One of the funniest books I read was "Very Stable Genius." That one,
yeah.
I mean, it's a serious book and it's very critical of Trump, but at the same time, it's funny
Yeah.
in the sense that how could people not see this and why did they still support him? I think
Yeah,
it's about psychology, right?
self-interest, and he's going to be the vehicle to take people where they want, I guess. I mean, if it's victory that they want, well, he's the guy who's going to win, so some people will back him no matter what.
Okay, but what underlies all that? Why are people going to back him? What is it about him that makes people think that he's the savior?
The
He's the guy that's going to get done what they want done.
o-
You know,
only the lack of someone else coming in to say I can unite the party. And this is the fault of the Democrats too. If the Democrats had someone who could say, look, none of these things that I'm addressing today are my problems. I'm trying to fix something that was caused by the other guy and trying to make it better. I mean, if we had a, I mean, I'm supportive of Biden, but I don't think he is seen in the way that will bring people from the other side over to unify.
I agree. He's not strident enough. I don't think. I'm not saying that he should be more progressive, quote unquote. That he should line up with AOC and the squad.
Yeah.
I'm saying that okay, he can take this moderated kind of position that's based on his belief that he can win people over in the Senate. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that there are people there that have integrity and sanity. Okay, I think that's a ridiculous position. Okay, I think that far beyond what McConnell is doing now, people say, "What is he doing?" He's resisting. This makes him look bad. No, he's betting on the possibility that much of what the Democrats try to do will either not succeed or succeed in such a way that critics will still have negative things, to be able to hang on to Democrats, even if they get some of what they're trying to pass now, even if they get it passed. What I think he wants to do is have the Democrats kill the filibuster, or squeeze it and narrow its application to fewer conditions, political issues, right? Particularly when it comes, for example, to voting rights.
Right.
But Biden hasn't taken a strident position on voting rights, and he needs to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
that is absolutely the key to what's going on right now.
Well,
You know,
it's also the key to put him over the top if you have
absolutely,
people in South Carolina
and
and
Georgia.
Georgia, and yes, because he was the hope, but it looks like and was always a problem with Biden. Um, as the middle guy, he's going to moderate. He looked pretty strong at the beginning a little bit, but he needs to be stronger. Hey, look, so let's get back to Powell, the
Okay,
discussion about Powell, because he was a firster. You mentioned a term, tokenism. Uh, I don't see Powell as a token, but I do see him as a model of someone who, a model for people, Filipinos, for Asian Americans, for people of color, who find themselves as the only BIPOC in the room. He's kind of the model for how to deal with it. And we both have had experiences where we're the only person of color in the room, or we're a group of firsts who have busted through in the academic world, certainly College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State, and in the media world where well, there's no other Filipinos here. I guess I'll open the mic and I'll become the first Filipino American to host this national show. So how can we? What are the lessons from Powell that other Filipino Americans, Asian Americans can learn?
oh man, number one is personal integrity. You have to carry yourself with a sense of commitment to honesty and affirmation and concern for others. That was one of the greatest things about him. I felt was this very understated commitment to seeing his job as not only a leader, but as a person who should do to others as he would want to be done to him. He was very, very Christian
Yeah.
in a nearly absolute sense. He was an example of, I think, walking in the shadow of Christ. He really was, and I'm a lousy Catholic. Okay,
Yeah. Well,
but,
okay, I'm right behind you there.
but
But tell me, was it the Christian part or the military part then that contributed to that a kind of rigidity to integrity,
oh,
which is a good rigidity if you're going to have rigidity toward anything.
right. I think it's probably both. I mean, first the commitment to living a moral and ethical life, right? That has to come first, and then that commitment being translated and transmuted, as it were, into a military environment. It makes absolute sense because militarist idealism presumes integrity, right? It presumes even more so masculinist integrity. The integrity that you exhibit when you're a member of the military is an idealization of Western male culture. Okay.
Well, you're ready to go to war on behalf of a nation. You're ready to put lives on the line. You better have some integrity, if nothing else.
Especially, yes, especially when there are others around you that have less than honest goals, or they have self-serving goals.
Right.
Okay, I think the best example of that is I feel resistance in my classroom when I talk about, let's take a look at war as a moneymaker, right? What people benefit from making war economically, and who benefits most. And we start to, I put up the cost, right, for bombers, the cost for ground equipment, including uh, treaded and untreaded vehicles and all that, submarines, aircraft carriers, etc. And we look at that and say, okay, well, who benefits from this? And then they start to see military contractors that supply, right, everything from goods and materials to weaponry to the military as a high profit activity. Okay. Uh, and then I look at Vietnam and the withdrawal of Vietnam, and then the following, it always happens, right, after we quit a war, uh, a, uh, a dip in the economy, right?
Yeah.
And that's because they're not cranking out bullets anymore at the volume that they were earlier. They're not training and uniforming 100,000 more troops. That's not happening anymore. And so those contractors, those suppliers aren't making as much money, and it has a downscale and downfield effect, right? The fewer
So,
jobs, all the rest of that. So
so are you saying Powell wasn't
I
was
think he was against all that. He would be the kind of guy, and you mentioned Eisenhower earlier. One of the last things that he said, right, that liberals love to cite is beware the military-industrial complex, right?
right, right.
And that's pretty close to what he actually said. I
Yeah.
think so. I think General Powell was definitely that kind of military man.
Yeah, I think he didn't. He always said he didn't like war, but if you're going to go to war, and this is part of the Powell doctrine, you better go with overwhelming force so that
That's
it
what you have
ends
to do.
quickly, and that we know we have an exit strategy. It seems pretty elementary, but the Powell doctrine was pretty elementary. If you're going to
Yeah.
go to war, I mean, it wasn't about we go to war because we're going to make money, the economy, and because there's other ancillary benefits to war. Certainly, we're not going to conquer a nation. We need to have a clear goal, right? And we also need the backing of the public. And then we have to go in, overwhelming force and have an exit strategy. Essentially, that's the Powell doctrine in a nutshell.
Yes, and
And
and I think that was something that he learned very early because he was a Vietnam War veteran,
yeah,
and a lot of veterans and non-veteran politicians, right, like to point at um, the inconsistencies in Washington D.C. on the war policy on how to fight the war in Vietnam as the reason that we quote lost unquote
yeah,
and retreated in shame. Um, So that's another issue that people don't talk about. I would like to see. I'm looking for the time to research a little bit more on Powell's statements about Afghanistan. You
yeah. Well, he was part of that certainly, and even though we're out of there, Trump started it. Biden tried to, was sort of hamstrung by how Trump began the exit, but there are still contractors making millions upon millions of dollars, even even on our exit
right?
to this day. There's still contracts, and so it's still a boon to some people in the economy. Hey, one thing about Powell is, as a person of color, that is a significant thing, and he I like to say he transcended politics. He also transcended race. There's just when you're a first, you really go someplace where no other person of color goes before, and it puts you in a different kind of category. It's that to me is one of the reasons why you have to like say, wow, this is a special guy. Not too many others like this. If there
Right.
are, they're just a handful. Not
Well, he was a conservative and a traditional one who was for affirmative action,
yeah.
not only in the military, but he was. Uh, I remember him talking about the need for strict application of fair criteria,
See,
right?
that's the thing. He was fair,
Yeah,
he and somehow that goes back to the integrity point you make that when he talks about being fair, you trust him. You say, "Well, that's the way to be."
yeah,
We have to be fair on these points. And it somehow when you see it coming from the out of the mouth of of an African American, a black man, you say, "Yeah, he can speak for us. He can go out there and fight for us. We're not gonna. I'm not gonna feel betrayed by him, like unless this was if it were a white politician.
yeah. We
And
got to be careful with that because people are going to say that we generalize about white politicians. Uh,
no, that's true. But all right, then the kind of we won't generalize. We'll say conservative white politicians.
yeah, I would even go further and say right wing white politicians. I know
Conservative.
I know a lot of conservative people. Most
Yeah.
of them are older than me or older than us, right?
Yeah.
And um, therefore they're traditional conservatives, and they're really high integrity people. I often tell folks when they ask about my own background that I tell them that it was a conservative Republican member of the California State Supreme Court staff, okay, who encouraged me in a conversation that we had about some issues that my parents were facing, some legal issues that they were facing, and he encouraged me to consider law school, and was really proud of the fact that I was admitted to Hastings, which is a block away from where, of course, he was working up until his retirement. And he's conservative Republican. He did
Yeah.
good, he did good thing. Our family doctor, right? Dr. Major, conservative Republican, and he did really good things that he didn't have to do
So
when my mother asked for support for members of our family that were trying to immigrate from the
yeah.
Philippines.
But this is Dan. What's happened there are good conservatives. There are
Well,
good
yeah,
white
right.
conservatives. What is it that in say subsequent generations we have found that we we are so divided and so polarized that we cannot find that common ground where we can appreciate one another as human beings. I mean, that's got to be the most destructive political thing that has happened in the last say 30 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And but see, the we were beginning to move in that direction even before Nixon,
Yeah.
and the evidence of that was not that Goldwater actually would have brought us to nuclear war, right? But he had said and done enough things
Mm.
uh, in a pretty militant direction, right wing conservative direction, um, that earned him the nomination for the Republican Party, right?
Right.
Uh, and that was indicative of something that had started beforehand. He didn't make up his political positions out of whole cloth. He was
Goldwater.
Yes, he was doing that because that was what the indications were from the post-war World War II period all
Yeah.
the way out. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why he did that. And one of the people who was responsible for that was actually tail gunner Joe McCarthy, right?
Yeah.
And one of his students the guy who studied McCarthy's success, at least, you know, for a short period of time, right? Uh, who studied his ascendancy was a guy named Richard Milhouse Nixon. So that clearly you can see all of those influences moving in a given direction, and moving the Republican Party not only further to the right, but moving the whole of American society to the right, so that what people think is the middle, or what should be the middle, is actually right of center kind of perspective. And
Kind of.
that's what's going on. So that makes anybody who's slightly liberal look like a radical, and that's the way they want to describe them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
That's true. I mean, you could make Joe Biden look as well. It looks pretty radical to me, or it looks
socialist.
pretty
Right
liberal.
away they say socialist. That's all they got to do. And the
Yeah.
people who grasp that and hold on, they can't even, they can barely spell socialism, much less understand what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, if you caught the show at the beginning, I quoted Kansas City tight end Travis Kelsey, who says, "We just want to bees ourselves. We just need to."
Yeah, yeah. That's not even good Ebonics, man. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, Travis Kelsey is a white guy saying, "We just got to bees ourselves," and
It's that,
but
well, it's
we do need to bees ourselves, but we need better grammar. Fortune. So Dan,
I think you know, what if he was trying to do Ebonics? I mean, that's what I think he was doing. I think he was trying.
oh well, yeah, but he's a white guy. I think he's
Yeah,
just
but you know, maybe he thinks he's woke. You know, maybe he
no,
thinks that's woke language, man.
he was being an ignorant white guy, but because he's
Yeah,
a
you're
star
pronouncing
tight
it wrong.
end,
It's not ignorant. It's ignorant.
ignorant, but because he is a star tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs,
Yes,
he
he is.
that's
He's
why
a
he was
damn good
saying,
one. Yeah.
"I just want to. We just need to bees ourselves." So anyway, hey
Okay.
Dan,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
always appreciate you coming on to talk, and we'll have you on more. But you know, the thing I just wanted to make sure I wasn't overreacting to the death of Colin Powell. I just really feel like God, we could use more of these guys, these kind of people,
Mm,
right?
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the tragedy. You know, he's 84 years old, and
Yeah.
he had some issues. You know, that
Well,
that affected his immunological condition. Right. I mean, he made him more susceptible to COVID problems.
yeah,
And
myeloma,
yeah,
cancer.
yeah, my own. And so he's 84, and he's lived a really great life. And you know, I'd like to know more about how his kids have turned out. You know what they're doing, because that's a pretty good indication of what kind of person he was as a parent, and a person who was credited with being, quote, a family man, unquote.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But you know, I would like to see I would like to see people, the takeaway from his death be the fact that here was a vaccinated man, according to reports, he was vaccinated, how he was in one of the most endangered groups, you know, elderly with cancer, how he could not prevent from getting COVID. And I blame the unvaccinated
yeah,
because
me too.
I think the unvaccinated, if he must have encountered someone who was unvaccinated, that's how he got it. If he got because he was doing a lot of things
Yes,
in
he
the
was.
community, but if more people were vaccinated, he may have he probably still would have been with us today. But the general did not have the persuasiveness in the end to tell people or to convince people that the only way out of this COVID war was to get vaccinated.
Yeah, yeah, it's an angering. You know, a lot of other people say that they're very sad. I think that's wimpy to say that you're only saddened
Mhm.
by the condition that we're facing right now in American society. These are people who absolutely weigh what they see as their personal individual freedom, right, as a far greater importance than responsibility to the whole of society. That's we're totally out of balance when people can do that.
Yeah.
So my hope is with
So the
my hope is with the youth. We have to engage in discussions about values and behavior and all that stuff. They say civics. We want to do civics. You know, they haven't taught civics in a long time the way that it should be taught. I'll tell you, I ask my students, particularly when they really, when they answer things quickly, clearly, and with and accurately, right? And I always ask them, "What about where'd you get that? How'd you do that?" And they said, "High school." And I said, they said there was a particular teacher at my school, and
yeah.
and people felt so there it was, right? That some people get teachers like that, and most people don't.
I'll
So
tell yeah, and it really goes back to high school or even junior high.
yeah, middle school,
I
junior
my
high.
junior high teacher, she taught me how to diagram a sentence, and then I have high school teachers who I still revere and love, and not the college teachers, oddly enough, because once you're in college, you're drinking too much beer, you know, or or you're doing other things. Hey,
Yeah, but
Daniel,
you didn't get
eh,
kicked out of Harvard. I got kicked out
uh,
of I got kicked out of City College.
no, I got kicked out of meditation school. Hey, Daniel Phil Gonzales, I thank you for being here with, and
It's
we'll
always
see you
great
again.
being on with you. That was a real fun discussion, and it's one that I hope we can follow up on.
Yeah, and we will. I'll have you on Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. Always good to have you on here talking about things that you won't hear on other stations, because we're talking about Asian Americans like we matter and Filipino Americans like we
As
matter.
well, we do.
Yeah. So, Daniel Phil, thank you very much. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you later on in the week. There's Daniel Phil Gonzalez. What a guy! He'll join from. We did these shows at another place, and we thought, well, let's do more of them here. You can hear my opinion, and occasionally we'll see your chat coming on Facebook. We'll have Daniel Phil come on at the end of the week. This is Filipino American History Month, and it's just important to have Dan with us. And so we thank him, and we'll have him back for more. All right. So and and when Dan comes on, we put the music on hold, and so now I gotta I gotta find my goodbye music. Oops, that's not goodbye music. That's not goodbye. I have to. Where is that goodbye music? I don't see it here. Okay, well, the somber. Oh, it's Emil Guillermo somber music. You know, this tune. We say goodbye. Just contemplative music. This is a big. This is a thing for me after calling myself Emil Amok for so many years to take a moment to be less amok, to be more mindful. So this is a point or the time I say thank you for being here. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. You can come join us, be here, bang the gong. You can find us on Facebook, emilguillermo.media. We'll post the replays on amok.com. I've been playing these live on emilguillermo.media and on the different on YouTube or on the Emil Guillermo YouTube channel live. If you miss it, of course we're recorded, but we just try to reach people because people are just like dialing in and they just say, "Oh, there he is, there he is." So check out the replays on amok.com. You can also, if you wish, you can email me, Emil at amok.com. We call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Tomorrow we'll do show 161. And really, I thank you for being here. And the best way to listen is really just to like be in your cubicle or like put it in your phone and just punch it up and just listen to it like radio. Or if you must see me, because well, it's going to take off his glasses. Oh, he's got a gong there. What's he going to do with the gong? He might do something with the gong. Yeah, just it's like radio, right? It's like radio, except you just check in and look at the screen and say, God, he sounds white, but he's Filipino. He's a little browner than that. Yeah, just come join in. But if you've come this far, this is the point where the real payoff is. This is where I thank you for being here. And where I let you know that you're okay. And you belong. And we're in this together. And we could give ourselves that loving kindness hug, right? And we can say together, may we be safe. May we be happy. May we be healthy. And may we live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahalo.